Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another webinar by Apologetics Kenya. Today we will be discussing human suffering, why there is suffering in the world, yet we know there is God and He is good. The ones who will be taking us through are Bill Dindi and Valency Gathungu. They'll be discussing basically, the suffering in the world, yet we as Christians believe there's a God and He is good. I think Valencia will be starting for around 15 to 30 minutes. Then Bill will be following up with after him. And yeah, karibuni wageni wetu. I see you guys are increasing in numbers. So I'll give this time to Bill or Valency, whoever might be starting, then we can continue.
Okay, thank you, Saya. My name is Valency. Can you hear me? Mnanisikia?
Yes, vizuri sana.
I think kuna problem ya net huku kwetu. So sijui kama ina help sometimes kutoa video baki tu audio for myself. Is it possible sometimes?
Yes.
Acha because inaniambia bandwidth.
Those so far kwa sababu tunakusikia, I think you can just get started.
Yes.
If there's a challenge, you could revert to that.
So basically, I am choosing to speak on the issue of where God is, especially during this corona season. Since the numbers even have escalated, now we are 581 cases, known cases. So the question begs, where is God during this corona season? So basically, I'm talking about. So I'll choose to view it in the larger lens of pain and suffering. Yes, pain and suffering. So I'm going to also give a Christian response to this scenario of pain and suffering, and then eventually we'll engage with you more. So here goes. So basically, pain and suffering is part and parcel of each and every one of us. Whether we are an observer of pain, of people experiencing pain, or we ourselves experience pain. So in the larger context of the Bible, how pain came into the picture, it's when the creatures of God, the angels first and then the human, rebelled against their creator. We see now evil seeping into all of creation. Now after the fall of man, basically all of creation per se went into utter futility, decay. Like now we have things like natural evil, even moral evils, and even physical evil, like what's happening now with the corona case, disease, pestilence, and stuff. The Bible is very clear on this issue that pain is part and parcel of this life, because as a result of the fallenness of the world. But within the Bible, yet still, I don't know, hapa nasumbuka kidogo. Wait, within the Bible sphere, yet pain is not permanent. Like, for example, like in the Middle Eastern concepts of the yin and the yang, where pain and goodness seems to exist until like forever. In Christianity, pain was never there. And initially, when the Trinity when the Trinity was at play and the angels, pain and evil was not there. It came. There was a time pain was not, and also eventually, in the Christian worldview, still there'll be a time when pain will not be there. So basically, in the whole biblical narrative of creation, fall, redemption, and restoration, we are in the redemption part right now. Basically, after man fell and all the host of creation fell with him, and even the earth groans, as the book of Romans tells us, in eager expectation of when the true sons of God will be revealed. So it's possible in a fallen world to experience things like this. But hey, not getting ahead of myself, I'll desire first to hear other world views on the issues of pain from my fellow apologist Bill Dindi before I come back to give a Christian response of how we are to make sense of this whole issue of pain and suffering during the corona season.
Okay, thank you very much, Valency, for getting us started. So let me also make a few opening remarks. We at Apologetics Kenya are keen on building capacity, and we want to continuously do this. That's why you notice we've been doing these presentations in pairs, because we want to grow and we want to offer this platform to as many of us as possible. So if you're here and you would like to engage, maybe make a presentation or facilitate a discussion, we'll be keen to follow that up with you. You can side chat Bonathaya. He'll be able to line you up. He'll let you know what's coming up so that we can continue to grow this capacity. So we are no sages on this stage. We are more guides by your side. We are more co-joiners with you as we seek to understand these very pertinent themes that we have been engaging at Apologetics Kenya. I also need to say, with regard to this topic, where is God in all this suffering? We are not holding brief for God. We are not trying to be God's lawyers, yeah? As Wole Soyinka said, a tiger need not roar its tigritude. Of course, there's no such word as tigritude, but well, he's Wole Soyinka, so I guess he's allowed to create words where none exist. But the point he was basically making is you don't need to defend a tiger. Yeah, you don't need to defend a lion. And so with God. So even in the wake and in light of pain and suffering, we need not defend God. And that's not the approach we are going to take today. Rather, in sensitivity to the reality of our context, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, we want to just present the Christian response to this whole challenge of pain and suffering and the resources that Christianity would offer to us as we go through this very trying time. So the framework, the format of our presentation with Bonathaya is going to be threefold. We are going to approach this with three prongs, so to speak. The first is we just want to appreciate the reality of pain and suffering. So he's done a bit of that, and I'm going to flesh that out a bit more. And then we are going to next look at what different worldviews have to say regarding pain and suffering. And I'll be measuring on that. And then Valency will come back and conclude with, so what is the Christian response? Yeah. So the reality of pain and suffering, what different worldviews have to say regarding pain and suffering, and what is the Christian position on pain and suffering. N.T. Wright, one of my favorite theologians and one of the leading theologians, especially in New Testament studies and bias on Paulinism, the study of the life and ministry of the Apostle Paul, wrote a book titled, How Long, O Lord? Reflections on Evil and Suffering. How Long, O Lord? Reflections on Evil and Suffering. I would recommend this book to all of us. It's a pretty neat book and a very concise response. It goes much deeper than we ever could in this forum. But in it, he discusses the author is N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright. I don't know what the N stands for, but the T is Thomas. N.T. Wright. In it, he discusses the existence of evil and categorizes it into three groups. There's natural evil. This is those natural accidents, what is otherwise known as acts of God. The tornadoes, the hurricanes, in Kenya today, the flooding, you know. And he also talks about malicious evil, which are the kinds of evil that one man initiates and affects other individuals and societies. Think about sexual assault, for instance. This is an example of malicious evil instigated by one person and affecting others deliberately. And then we have accidental evil. And here you have examples of bridges collapsing. Yes, Jeremiah, thank you. It's Nicholas Thomas Wright, N.T. Wright. Accidental evil, think about bridges collapsing, houses collapsing, etc. In a sense, it has the hand of man, but by and large, it can pass for accidents. So really, motor accidents on our roads, those would be examples. And throughout the history of humanity, our story is replete with these kinds of suffering. We have experienced natural evil, malicious evil, and accidental evil. The COVID-19 pandemic is not novel. The virus may be novel, but this is not unprecedented. In the history of humanity, we have had such and worse pandemics. Think about the Spanish flu, for example, and the Black Death, in Europe in the 15th century, and there are estimates of up to 25%, I think, of the population of Europe dying of that pandemic in the 15th century. So it's not novel. This is the reality of our existence. Think about the locusts pandemic in the locust scourge in East Africa at the moment. There are talks of a second wave of attacks. Think about the flooding in the country. And if all that is not touching you, think about the political elite, the political elite that's ravaging the country, arguably, probably worse than all these pandemics combined. I really empathize with the people in Kariobangi, for example, and people having to sleep out in the open because the government has decided to destroy their houses. And yet, whether or not notice was given and blah, 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 illegal land, all that, honestly, at this time, with the flooding and the rains and with the curfew and the pandemic, maybe this was not the right time. So there's also this political elite and just political decisions that affect the wider populace. So that is also an issue. So you see that pain, suffering, brokenness seem to be inescapable for the sons of Adam, for us living this side of eternity. Someone called this, we are living in the wreckage of Eden. And this side of eternity, this will always be our reality. If you will not be caught by any of this, there is the reality of natural atrophy, that you and I, sooner rather than later, will die, yeah? And worms will devour whatever is left of you. So this seems to be inescapable, this side of eternity. C.S. Lewis wrote an essay on living in an atomic age. At the time, there are lots of fears of atomic bombs being used by the different warring factions. This was shortly after the United States had detonated the atomic bomb over Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There were fears that another country could follow the example and use that. So they were living under the shadow of the atomic scares and fears of the atomic, another atomic explosion. And this is what he wrote in an essay regarding this. And I think it's very relevant and pertinent to our time as well. He says, you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year, as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed, as you're already living in an age of cancer and syphilis and paralysis, an age of air raids, of motor accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation, just like ours. Believe me, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb, and we could replace that with the coronavirus. Before the coronavirus came about, and quite a high percentage of us are going to die in very unpleasant ways. Our world already bristles with such chances, and death itself is not chance at all, but a certainty. So really, just belaboring the point that, hey, death, suffering are realities of our time. Allow me to conclude that whole thought on the reality of pain and suffering with a quote from Lauryn Hill's Neurotic Society. Lauryn Hill was a member of the Fugees band in the mid-90s. For those of you who are hip-hop heads in the 90s, the era of real hip-hop, when you had Biggie and Tupac and others, yeah? So Lauryn Hill wrote this much later. I think this was in between 2010, 2012 there. And it's just a nice indictment of society. that sounds paradoxical. And no, someone is asking whether Christians should be listening to Lauryn Hill. Well, it's just like the way we are reading books that are not Christian per se. This is just someone's commentating on our times. And I think she quite aptly captures what I'm trying to describe. So she says, cold world kills softly. Whole world runs savagely. Quick scam and drag queens. Real likely to blast fiends. Superficial vanity, borderline insanity. Out of order humanity, crime committed so passively. Desperados and casualties. Corporations want batteries. Explanations of strategies, dominations and mastery. Light swords and yellow men, junkies in popularity. Culture so independent, vultures scavenge reality. Past feeling depravity to king's social cavity. Pimps, pushers and harlotry. Nepotism, no artistry. Despotism and privacy. Desperation, dishonesty. Physicist is your policy. More money, less equality. Inflated global ego. Imitating reality. Glam life in debt. Scam life in editors. Byproduct of neglect children hiding from creditors. Absence of self-respect. Fully scared of competitors. Lifestyle of luxury at someone's expense. Sensitive children. Used up and sacrificed. Blind to the consequence. Smoked up on dope pipes. Ecstasy, fast life. Recklessly past life. Narcotics and cash fights. Just neurotic society. And she goes on and on. It's not very common for a secular artist to pinpoint the accuracy or capture the accuracy of our times as Lauryn Hill does in this track. And I think it just belabors the point that pain, suffering, brokenness are realities that are experienced by all. Saints and sinners, believers and unbelievers, all of us are experiencing this reality. And so, my second point, it is thus incumbent on every worldview to respond to this challenge of pain and suffering. Atheists have made they've made it seem like the problem of pain and suffering is the kryptonite for theism. But if we are to be objective, even they need to provide a response. And I'll shortly say a few things about what they have to say regarding pain and suffering. So I don't have time to go through all the worldviews and what they have to say regarding pain and suffering. So I've tried to cluster different worldviews, and I must say that this is probably not the best approach because these worldviews are not monolithic. Yeah, even within the worldviews themselves, you have different stratas. You know, you have different strains of thoughts that may be differing from others. But for the purposes of this presentation and in the interest of time, I have clustered this into 4. So the first one is the Eastern worldviews. And by Eastern, I'm talking about Hinduism, Taoism, Jainism, Buddhism, Confucianism. So most of those Eastern philosophies and worldviews. And next, I will talk about secular humanism and postmodernism, the whole atheistic worldview. And then I'll say a bit about Islam, and Buona Valenci will pick it up with the Christian response. So since we want to major on the Christian response, I will not spend a lot of time on these other worldviews, but I'll just quickly gloss over them, beginning with the Eastern worldviews. So the Eastern worldviews generally teach the overarching philosophy that explains pain and suffering is that there is a universal oneness with everything. You know, it's the Atman concept. Oneness unifies all beings, that there is divinity in every being. All existence can be explained as a single reality. So there's one eternal and differentiated consciousness, so to speak. And as such, pain that an individual may experience is an illusion. It basically does not exist. So the way out of pain and suffering is for us to elevate and dissociate from emotions to eventually attain moksha. Moksha, which is that independence from emotions and feelings and the necessity therefore of reincarnations and karma. Moksha, paradoxically, is achieved by overcoming ignorance and desires. So it's a paradox that, in a sense, overcoming desires also includes overcoming the desire for moksha itself. So you should not quite desire moksha, though that is really what you should desire if you are to eventually overcome pain and dissociate from the emotions and keep coming back in those karma reincarnations. So it's a bit convoluted, if you ask me, and denying the reality of pain and suffering does not do justice to our experiential to the experiential reality of pain. The fact that we know that pain exists, we feel the pain. If I slap you now, you will feel the pain. You cannot wish it away. Yeah. So that is the predominant view among the Eastern philosophies, religions, and worldviews. And then I'll quickly mention something on Islam. Compared to the Eastern philosophies and world, progressive and objective in its outlook on pain and suffering, because it does not refute the existence of pain and suffering. It acknowledges the reality of pain and suffering, but its interpretation is where there is a challenge, because they interpret it as a test of faith. And yes, to a large extent, there are instances where pain and suffering might have that dimension, but predominantly that is not necessarily the case. There is much more to that. So stopping there does not give a complete picture of pain and suffering. There is also the concept of the sovereignty of Allah, that as long as Allah wills it, it will get done, whatever Allah's will is. And to some extent, there is congruence there with the Christian understanding of the attributes of Yahweh. But again, it's incomplete, yeah? Because for them, it breeds a certain sense of resignation and fatalism. Allah will will it, it will get done, and there is no recourse, so to speak. So their response is usually inshallah, yeah, with regard to pain and suffering. But for the Christians, there's a lot more. We know that yes, God is sovereign. We know that yes, whatever God wills to do, he will do it from the counsel of his will. But there is a lot more to this, especially talking about the incarnation of the Son of God and what that teaches us. The cross is the central message of Christianity, which is very different from these other worldviews. Someone said the cross of Jesus Christ is what probably separates Christianity from all these other worldviews. Think about it. Think about what these worldviews say regarding Jesus. For the Jews, well, for the atheists, maybe we should start there. Jesus never existed. For some, there are those who agree that he did live, but his claims are wrong. But there are those who actually believe he never even existed. For the Jews, he lived and he died, but he never rose from the dead. And for the Muslims, he lived and died. That is, if you believe their conception of Nabi Isa is the same as the Christian conception of God, that is debatable. But even if that were to be the case, we are saying, they are arguing that he lived, but he never died. So here is one worldview that says he lived, that he never lived. Another worldview says he lived, but he never died. Another one said he lived and he died, but he never rose from the dead. But we Christians say, claim he lived, he died, and he rose from the dead. So the cross of Jesus Christ remains the central pillar of our faith, and it separates us from all these other positions and worldviews. And that has a lot to say. The cross of Jesus has a lot to say on the Christian view on suffering and evil. And Thaya will be talking about that. Finally, secular humanism, postmodernism, and most of these atheistic worldviews. Epicurus, the Greek philosopher, probably is one of the first to very coherently address this matter. Although even before him, a lot was written regarding this. You must know about the Epicurean Trilemma that was famously quoted by David Hume in the 18th century. And he basically argues that there are three premises that he advances. Number one, is God willing to prevent evil and pain, but he is unable to do so? If that is the case, then he is not omnipotent. He's not all-powerful. The second premise is God able to prevent evil, but he is unwilling to do so? Then he is malevolent, yeah? Or at least he's less than perfectly good. And then the third premise is that if God is both willing and able to prevent evil, then why is there evil in the world? Now, much as this very concisely presents the challenge of pain and suffering to the theistic worldviews, it does not quite tell us about what this worldview of theirs has to say regarding what is their position on pain and suffering. How should an atheist deal with pain and suffering? So maybe to get a hint of this, we have to go all the way to this age. We have to move from David Hume and Epicurus to our age and times and meet Bwana Richard Dawkins, yeah, one of the famous four horsemen of neo-atheism, together with his colleagues Christopher Hitchens, the left, Daniel Dennett, and Sam Harris. And he sums up their position pretty much with this statement. He says, the universe observed has precisely the properties that we should expect if there is at the bottom of it no design, no purpose, no evil, surprisingly, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. DNA neither cares nor knows. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. That is basically their position. And frankly, to a person who is suffering, it does not do much, it does not help much, you know? Pain is meaningless, basically, that's what they're saying. So don't complain. You are just a speck of stardust after all. And so there is nothing to complain about. Things are exactly as they should be with this randomness of design. So it's not very helpful. If anything, it's probably even paradoxical, because the same Dawkins has written of Yahweh, the very illustrious comment on Yahweh, where he says that Yahweh is a vindictive, bloodthirsty, ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, capriciously malevolent bully. You know, it's a very colorful quote that probably, as Professor John Lennox says, it tells us more about Richard Dawkins than it tells us about God. Yeah, their framework, their theistic framework, basically do not allow them to even make such moral stances, to hold such moral stances, because for their framework to be upheld, there needs to be moral law or an objective truth, you know, and they argue that this does not exist. In the previous quote from the same guy I've mentioned, he basically says there's no good, there's no evil, there's no purpose. So again, their position is very convoluted, it's warped, and it frankly does not help much to those who are going through evil and suffering. So, brothers and sisters, what we are saying is all these other worldviews, and I've not had the time to mention all of them, but all these views treat suffering as something either to be avoided or something to be denied, like the Eastern, or to be tolerated, as in Islam, or there's a confused stance that is not coherent, like from the atheistic worldview. So I want to put it to us that the Christian position makes the most sense. The Christian position is the most coherent. It's the most helpful in helping people deal with pain and suffering. At this point, allow me to hand it back to our brother Valency, to present the Christian stance, the Christian worldview's response to the problem of pain and suffering. So, Valency, over to you, if you can hear me.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Bill, sorry, I think kuna problem huku side zetu na network. Honestly, I have not even heard a lot of what you have said. Nimesikia in bits, you know how Zoom gets when kuna kuanga na hizo disruptions. So
Just continue.
So let me just continue.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
So the Christian response, basically, as let's put it, pain and suffering sometimes it's God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world per se. So when Christians basically experience suffering, or we see people suffering, we always ask that the why question. Why does God let people die? Why God did he allow me to get raped? Sadly, but the Christian response, the biblical view of suffering, at least does not leave you in a lonely space for you to realize that, oh, you're the first one maybe to cry about these things and whatnot. Actually, there have been many people, even during biblical times and even now, even great Christian thinkers, who have also wrestled with this issue of the why question, why suffering, why evil, pain. Like if you turn to the book, for example, of Habakkuk, we see he begins his conversation with a complaint to God. Why and how long, yani? So basically, Habakkuk is actually more honest than religious people. He bears his soul to God, his grief, his disappointments, his anger to God, than even most religious folks. And also, funny enough, also Habakkuk, when I see him wrestling with God in the book of still Habakkuk on the why and how long question, he's also faithful. He doesn't wrestle like an unbeliever or like a secular person who wrestles away. He wrestles inside. So this why question, God, to us Christians, God is big enough to have the answer. He's big enough to handle your grief, your pain, and your suffering. God is big enough. Yes. And then obviously the second point, basically taking us to the book of Job. We can't, from the biblical standpoint, we can't fully understand why each and every suffering or each and every pain happens the way it happens. Like Job never learned why he suffered the way he suffered in this life, yani. So there's a sense of humility when, from a Christian perspective, when we approach issues of suffering, in the sense that we don't know fully. Yes, we have an overview of fundamental framework of the fallenness of man, but we really don't know fully why people may suffer the way they do, specifically to humans. But we have a moral, a more grounding fundamental foundation on the reason why pain and suffering is, because basically the basic Christian view of the fallenness of man, the fallenness of creation. But when it comes to various specific sufferings, pains, even by being born with body deformities, we can't really say that maybe this person, sadly, maybe even the book of Job tries to distinguish between the karmic view of pain and suffering and the biblical view of pain and suffering, in the sense that the karmic view of biblical and suffering is basically do good, get good, do bad, get bad. But it's not always the case. Like how even the man who was born blind, when the disciples probed Jesus, he said, none of their parents sins, even not him, but it was for the glory of God per se. So there's a sense of humility, and also eventually, as Job came to find out, when God answered Job's queries in chapter 38 to 41, we see, I'll try to paraphrase, we see God saying, I am God and you're not, and you can trust me on this. So to some extent, that's our finality. And God gives again himself. And God, to some extent, is our answer. Also, another biblical view still on suffering, even in in the corona season, is the Bible. The Bible affirms the unthinkableness of suffering, its tragedy, and even its oppressive weight. It does not forbid tears. Actually, it tells us, mourn with those who mourn. So the Bible does not wash away suffering. It contends with it. It lives with it. Yes. And also, lastly, or as I finish, basically, is that eventually God took his own medicine. When Jesus Christ took upon flesh and died for us, and he came and lived, dignifying humanity. The second person of the Trinity came, suffered, and he thought it was all worthwhile for you to reconcile us back to his Father, basically defeating evil and reconciling us back to God. So to some extent, suffering will come to an end, because as the scriptures normally tell us, because he lives, we shall also live. So for a Christian, the worst thing is not even to die with coronavirus. The worst thing is, for even unbelievers per se, the worst thing is to die without Christ per se. Because corona, it's also another pandemic. And also maybe there'll always be, in this, the price of life in this fallen world, there'll always be other problems to deal with, other issues, other evils. In this side of eternity, in this life, until the Prince of Peace comes, there is no end. But God is our end. Yes, the Bible does not promise to take away our problems. But if you believe that biblical Christianity, you're not meant to suffer and whatnot, it's nowhere in the Bible. Actually, there's no scripture that affirms that a believer will live a life with no suffering involved. So actually, Christ promised suffering actually to us for his sake, but also he promised peace, a peace which surpasses human understanding. So in the book of Revelation, from chapter 21, from verse 1 to 4, in the new heavens and the new earth come, basically we see God setting things right. So the whole biblical narrative has been God, what went wrong, where the world came from, what went wrong with it, and God, how God is trying not only trying, but eventually he will succeed making things right, even making you and I right, because we are not also right by ourselves. We are fallen also. So eventually God makes things right in the new heavens and the new earth. And also, funny enough, we see another picture of God wiping our tears. And it's interesting. It's a consolation of suffering. Consoles us, he comforts us, and he realizes that indeed, yes, we suffered, but he is God. Yes. So I think that's at least the surface of the basic Christian response, scratching the surface, obviously. There are many other responses, even the reason Pierre, like other church fathers who thought about, like, for example, Origen thought about the greater good theodicy, where God permits evil per se, but he has an intended greater good in mind eventually he will accomplish, given time and wisdom. So, but there are many other thinkers who have thought about this issue of pain and suffering, even at length, even that more than this forum we're trying to basically guide you and then engage with you. So that's the Christian response. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Valency. Bill, do you have something to add?
Basically,
Bill, kwani ulienda kunywa maji?
Sorry. Yes, nilikuwa nimekimbia kunywa maji kidogo. Some of the side benefits to this virtual conferencing, virtual meetings. Yeah.
Anyway, Valency has just given a biblical view on suffering. I think maybe we'll take it up from there.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more to say. Well, I know there is much more to say, but in the interest of time, we had wanted to allow for more interactions around this subject. What are people saying? What have, especially in light of this pandemic, what are the conversations out here, and how should we respond? Like we said, we are not, we don't want to be the sage on stage. We want to be the guide by your sides and really co-journers with you. So I'm sure in here is enough wisdom to respond to any other question that may be. So maybe at this point I will just
invite people.
Open the floor.
Okay.
Yes. Any questions?
Okay. Please, guys, raise your hands using this platform. Is where you can raise your hand. Or okay, Charles Wandalo has raised. Anyone else? Okay, Kithiri, I see your hand. Are you still up? You've lowered then your hand, Kithiri. Just sawa. Anyone else? Ama maybe more questions will come as we continue. So let's hear from Charles. Charles Karada, you're next. Okay, so Charles, sema tuambie maneno.
Oh,
2 questions maximum.
Okay, I was just wondering, okay, 2 questions, let me ask the 2. Like how we should minister to those suffering from COVID-19. Let's just say you heard someone has gotten COVID. So like practically, what are you going to do? Or maybe someone has lost someone from COVID. Like I personally have a friend who's lost their dad, like a Kenyan. They lost their dad from due to COVID-19. So I guess, is that 1 question or that's 2? Okay. I guess that's, I guess can I add 1 more, just 1? Okay. So like, I think the main one that I wanted to ask is it seems this COVID-19 is raising issues that that have been hidden. You know, like how like the African lab rats thing. You know, Africans are lab rats, and the Chinese are disease disseminators, and apparently Africa is supposed to be inferior, but we have the lowest number of cases. And so like there are all these things. I don't know how we should be thinking about them as Christians. Yeah, so yeah, just that.
Great. Thaya, maybe we can take several. Okay. Thaya, you're muted. Are you trying to say something?
Oh, sorry. I thought, yes, Nani Mwangi, sema kitu.
Yeah, I was, I think we talked about can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit on atheistic religions, pantheistic worldviews. I was just wondering, do the Africans have a response to pain and suffering? I just thought about it. I don't know. Maybe someone who would have an idea of what exactly did the Africans think about pain and suffering. And yeah, other than the fact that the gods were angry.
It is the gods. It is the gods who are angry. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be my question.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else with a question?
Mzee Kubai has a question. Bwana Kubai, you are muted. Please unmute.
I thought you are the one who had muted me. Okay, now, a couple of things. It's not really, I don't have questions. I have a couple of comments. First about Che and his Africans and their pain. If I speak about the Kikuyu community, we had this. We tried. The Kikuyus would try to explain whatever is going on. This sickness or the other one is because you have failed to do ABCD, or because you have done ABCD. For example, if as a mzee like myself, if I received dowry for my daughter, but I had not paid dowry for my wife, then tragedy would befall me. I would fall sick, and that would be an explanation for something, for some evil that has befallen me. And there are all manner of categories that tried to explain, and the solutions were also prescribed depending on what that particular problem was. I may have to go and make beer for my in-laws and take goats to them for me to escape from this curse and recover from whatever problem I am having. So that what there was is they understood pain, but they tried to explain it in different ways depending on the specific circumstances. The other thing I wanted to comment about is the gentleman who has talked about, he knows a friend who's somebody whose father has died from the COVID virus. And well, death, the loss of a loved one is the loss of a loved one, from COVID, from cancer, from whatever other loss. I don't think that there would be a special implication of the COVID virus. Last weekend, I buried my uncle, and we were sad. I don't think we would have been any sadder if he had died of COVID. He had some form of cancer, and he died, and our loss was equally painful, so to speak. So death is death. The COVID is just one of the things that causes death. Actually, at the moment, floods have killed more Kenyans than COVID. And I don't think that the loss is less painful, or that, there is something special about a COVID death. The other thing is, I have not heard anybody, the panelists, maybe they should have gone a step further and see, since we are all talking about the scriptures actually promise much more suffering than we have seen, than anything we have seen yet. God has promised plagues that I believe are not very far from here, where you say, and this happened, and a third of mankind died. Read the book of Revelation. So there is pain that is literally prophesied and promised by God. I didn't hear that part addressed by any of the speakers. Nonetheless, I think they have done a good job. Really, the pain is the result of sin. It is the result of God creating men with free will, because you cannot have free will without the possibility of sin. And all the other things come from sin. The death, the pain, the rot, they are the result of sin. And that is because God thought it worth it to create beings with a free will. He has enough bodies out there in space that are mechanical, but it is only in the context of free beings that everything good, you see, everything good like love and and compassion and joy, those are made possible by free will, but it comes at a cost. And the beauty of the Christian story is, even though sin comes in, God himself has provided the solution for that problem. It's only that it is in the future, but it is guaranteed. But I always seem to think that the greatest problem of man is not even pain, it is time. Time is God's biggest secret, and it is man's biggest problem. Because pain becomes a problem because we go through it over time. But after we have seen the results at the end of it, Paul says, when he looks forward to the crown that is awaiting him, all the things he goes through on earth become viable, as it were. So our biggest problem is time. Oh, I think I have overspoken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kubai. Bill, will you mind responding to a few of these questions while I prepares himself?
I was actually wondering, Valency, is there any that you would want to respond to? And then maybe I can also make a few comments. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mnanisikia?
Yes.
Yes.
Sawa, kuna nasikia distorted sounds, especially when Kubai was talking, yani na wandalo kiasi, but at least the question is typed, so I'll go on.
Okay.
I think in Christianity kuna this the ministry of presence per se, so to put it, in the sense that yani not going, especially to those who are bereaved, who have passed away. Maybe you know a person who has lost somebody by corona per se, or anything. Basically going and sitting with them, yani being like Job's friends at first, not at the latter stages when they started giving their feeble judgments per se. Basically the ministry of presence, in the sense that go sit down with them, pray, speak when they speak to you. Yes, I believe, yes, you might be well-meaning, quoting various scripture, all things work out, blah blah blah, but sometimes in terms of grieving, we need just the ministry of presence, and people to be around us, just to hold us. Yes. Uh-huh.
Any other
Yeah,
question
I'm
you want
done,
to
I think.
respond, Valency, apart from that?
Yeah. Hi, Thaya, Mr. Thaya.
Any other question you want to
Mm-hmm.
respond? Okay. Bill, I think
Okay,
you are
maybe
on.
I can just make a few remarks. Yeah, a few remarks, although I think Mr. Kubai has done justice to this. And rather than just ask, I would also be very curious to hear Bwana Wandalo's perspectives on some of these. I know many times he asks the questions, but he also has, you know, some good wisdom on how to go about it. And since tunasaidiana hapa, we are cross-pollinating these ideas, I would also really love to hear your thoughts, especially on the question you asked on how do we respond. I would ask, how has he responded? And what can we learn from his response? But I would think about, first of all, just the need to be empathetic. Like we said, we Christians do not deny the existence of pain. So we will not trivialize someone else's pain. We will not, or rather, we should not attempt to probably immediately jump to theologize or philosophize it away. I think the wisest thing to do at first is really just to empathize with pain. And I liked how Bwana Kubai reminded us that it really is not corona, it's not death per se compared to all these other losses that we experience. So the need to be empathetic, and then I think the need to be practical, because for some of these challenges, and I like that in the African framework, we already have systems that are very helpful in terms of societal engagement with those who are either grieving or suffering in one way or the other. So how can we practically help? You know, there are times where we have done a small harambe, changad money, put resources together to support, practically see what are the needs and how can we respond to those needs. If guys have been kicked out of their homes and they are sleeping out in the open, that's not the time to start theologizing about, you know, God's purpose for suffering. We probably need to, first of all, help put a shelter over their heads. So one, empathy. Two, are there any ways we can practically help? But the big one there is just considering the gospel response to this. Like, what does the gospel ultimately say about the problem of pain? So in the long term, as we engage with these people in the long term, I think it's important to present the holistic gospel and for them to realize that, like Bwana Kupai says, there is an end to this. God promises to wipe away all our tears. I was impressed with the question inequalities that Corona has exposed. And on Twitter, there was a tweet by, I think it's called Mariga someone, and I quote the tweet. I noted it somewhere. It says, "COVID isn't an equalizer, not in the least. It has been touted as such, but it's not quite it. Though we all die, but think about it. Social distancing requires privilege. Hand washing requires privilege. Staying at home without an income requires privilege. Wearing a mask requires privilege. Virtual learning requires privilege. Not getting arrested in our context here requires privilege. And we could go on and on. So it has exposed inequalities, not just in the global platform, like globally issues of race and all, even locally with some of the interventions that the government has put in place, inequalities are being exposed. So what should we do with this? We could, whimper and or be indifferent to all of this, or we could take advantage of the conversations around this to, one, just be part of the conversation. I, for one, have been keen to engage in these conversations with different individuals. I have had opportunities, for example, with non-believers to discuss the whole question of justice and just how our society here is truly unequal. And can we find justice on earth? And it has led to some very interesting conversations on faith. So I would say, could this be opportunities for us to leverage and have broader conversations around themes that could even help us present the gospel to those around us? And then two, social justice. I think it's also an opportunity for us to be engaged in social justice. Could we help speak up for those who cannot speak, for instance, in the wake of these inequalities? Is this an opportunity for us to speak up? And we have had Christians champion different causes throughout history. Think about the likes of William Wilberforce and what slavery provided as an opportunity for him to really just present the gospel and do something practical to transform his society. And that he fought for the abolition of slave trade successfully, with, of course, the consistency of others that he was able to rally around. So this could be a moment for us to have these conversations and help bring about some changes, have a broader conversations on the broader themes of life on earth, and how ultimately Christ, who will come to even the scales. And then it also brings about the reality of the problem of sin, that at the heart of our issues is really the issue of sin. Yeah, someone said the heart of the matter is the matter of our hearts. That Jeremiah 17:9 got it spot on. Yeah, our problem is sin, and what you see manifesting on these different platforms, societal spaces, is really the problem of sin. So Corona has come, and those who are able to steal from others, you have seen it, have used their positions to steal, which is very unfortunate. But what is really the underlying problem here is the problem of sin. There are all these talks about the possibility of this even being a biological, designed in the lab and stuff like that. Whether or not that is true, but it really provides an opportunity for us to explore the root cause of many of the challenges that we experience, which is the problem of sin, and what do the different worldviews do with the problem of sin. And again, you will find that the Christian response to the problem of is the most liberating. So anyway, that's what I'd say. And thank you, Bwana Shege, for bringing about the question of the African worldview. I think it was an oversight on my part, but yes, the Africans were pretty pragmatic about this issue. I think most of their interventions were very practical. Most of their positions and interventions were very practical. There was also a sense of fatalism for them, as I think about it. Once the gods decide, the gods have their way, and the gods have to be appeased and all that. But maybe I should have given a bit more time to look at the African position on this. Yeah, thank you very much. I think we can proceed. Oh, Bwana Wandalo, please share with us, how did you respond and what can we learn from you? And then Bwana Thaya, we could pick more questions.
Which question exactly? Oh, like generally
How
suffering,
did you
or
how did you respond to your friend who lost the father? And we're just saying we would also love to learn from you because we know you must have responded. What can we learn from your response?
it was very difficult, to be honest, because it was abrupt. I didn't expect it, and so to be honest, the only thing I did was get into a WhatsApp group and help with fundraising for the funeral, which has taken place. Honestly, like that's really it. So we haven't had much of a it's awkward. I don't know. You know, it's one thing if we are talking about it theoretically, yeah. But when it's happened to someone,
Yep, true.
it becomes hard to start talking about. I'm actually giving it time because I know it hasn't really sunk in that he has lost his dad. And I know when it sinks in, that's maybe when I will have to chip in.
Yeah.
So I'm just letting it, because it was just last week or the other week. So like, I think you can be in denial for a while. But I think I agree that it's not the time to come with heavy theology or even not so heavy theology like Romans 8:28, everything works for the good for those who love the Lord. But I don't even think he's a believer. So I guess I need to share the gospel with him. But it's difficult because, again, like I've also heard of another story of another person another relative but I think they were lost due to high blood pressure or something. But so like it's just usually difficult when you're dealing with someone going through it. But especially for COVID-19, I think what I struggle with is the fact that you can't really be with someone. Like you have to stay away from them. So I believe that just coming with them with scriptures is probably not the initial thing to go for, but to be there for them somehow. I think for the COVID case is a bit complicated, especially if they say, I feel like I'm dying right now, and you can't really be with them because if you go, you might get COVID. So it's a tricky thing, and just calling them on the phone, I don't know how that's helping if they're dying and their lungs are dying at that moment. So yeah.
Wow. Yes, thank you for sharing, bro. I think this really brings home the reality that really these are experiences that should we go through could prove quite tricky. I agree, like the fact that you can't go to them, you can't hug them, you can't, things that we'd typically do maybe with these other cases. And that truly is something wisdom to establish precedences and do things right. Henry Owaga, my very good friend, reminds us in the chat there of James chapter 1 verse 27, that religion that our God, that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. So again, just as we have mentioned, the need for empathy and finding practical ways of assisting, I think go a long way. So thank you, bro. Thank you, Charles, for even just taking the step to help with the fundraising and stuff. Sometimes that does make a huge difference. So I would suggest we move on. If we have any other questions, we have about 10 minutes. So maybe round of questions, which will be the final.
Okay. I'll let Shage ask one question. Maybe I would want to add to what Charles was saying. sometimes the Bible is written in words, and words are good and words are important. But I think the words that we read from the Bible are meant to saturate us to the point where now we live out Christianity in word and in deed. Now, the deed part is where James says faith without works is dead. What do you believe? So how are you living as if you believe what you believe? So I'm not discouraging quoting verses here and there to encourage people, but sometimes just showing that love that Valency was talking about, being there for that person. As much as Corona and this whole COVID situation, you cannot be there for that person. You can call them, you can ask, how are you doing? Just let them vent, let them speak, let them cry, let them say everything, and just let them speak, let them be. And so that you be there, not physically but emotionally and socially. So maybe that would be one of the things I would say. I'll let Shege ask a question, or maybe give a comment, then we can wrap this thing up. Shege.
Yeah, thank you. I think I just wanted to, it's more like tying in some of the things that we've said. And what I wanted to add, perhaps let me say add, I don't want to say tie in. I think that's Bill going to tie everything in. But I have always found it interesting that the question of pain and suffering is a question of value. It's a question of saying that something that is happening, whatever is happening to me or to another person, should really not be happening, or at least that's what we think, or we feel. Or if it is happening, and it is happening, it is not something that we appreciate. You get what I mean? That it is a question of value. And I think that is what makes, for me, Christianity to be very important when it comes to that question, because it legitimizes the questions that we ask about pain and suffering. I think we covered that when we talked about the Christian response, only that in the idea of saying that I am suffering is to say that I think I have value, that there is something about me that is being violated. There's something about my neighbor that is being violated. And I think you can only accord and give value to human beings from a Judeo-Christian worldview. Any other worldview will be deficient in giving us a source of value and intrinsic worth for the individual. So I think even as we are reflecting on these questions, I don't think this is necessarily a response to somebody. I just think it is something we have to keep at the back of our mind of how Jesus enables us to actually ask questions about suffering legitimately, that we are not asking something in a vacuum. We are actually saying that we appreciate that we have value. And when we are suffering from COVID-19, from cancer, when our brothers are dying, when we are getting into accidents and we are feeling the pain, we are simply saying that there's something about us, about the image of God in us that is being violated. I think I just wanted to put that across. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Bill, can you summarize everything and
That's really amazing. I would probably ask I will ask Valency to summarize at the end, but my concluding remarks is really just to say pain is real. We are experiencing pain. It's because of the brokenness that our world is experiencing from the fall. But God is working to redeem and restore all things. God created the world beautiful and harmoniously. There was harmony in creation. There was, symbiosis, and really, it felt like a well-organized, well put together universe, then sin happened. So first of all, the beauty and harmony of creation affirms the fact that pain and suffering and all came afterwards. And then two, that even after it came, God has a plan. There's a roadmap to restore, reorder, get creation back to where it started, so that in the end, as D.A. Carson says, Job chapter 42 is to the rest of the book of Job what Revelations chapter 21 and 22 is to the rest of Revelation. That justice will not just be served, but it will be seen to be served at the end of the day. Our God is working to restore that. But even as we move towards that time, today, here and now, in the midst of the messiness of the locust invasion and the flooding and the COVID-19 and all the poverty and political elite that is messing us up, that Jesus Christ empathizes with us right here, right now. I think it's Edward Shillito, if I'm not wrong, who wrote a poem regarding Jesus. I think it's called Jesus of the Scars. He says, but to our wounds, only God's wounds can speak, and not a God has wounds but thou alone. So whilst other gods stay away, gods quote unquote, stay away in this ethereal Elysiums, you know, far removed from our existence here, our God is Emmanuel. He incarnated to be with us. He feels us and he intercedes with us as the man, Jesus Christ. So just an encouragement for us that our God is here with us in the midst of the fire, in the midst of the flood, and that should give us hope. Thank you very much, and God bless. Over to Valency to conclude.
Thank you for these conversations, basically, because this issue of coronavirus has indeed become even so overwhelming. Even when you go outside, you hear people talk, basically very hopeless remarks, and appear knowing Kenyans sometimes even taking it casually, saying, "Oh, the government is lying." Yeah, these all stories we hear, but basically, there are some sufferings in this world where no immediate answer can really suffice, like really. So maybe even the appropriate response is to really weep, because even the Bible asks us, weep, mourn with those who mourn. And also, yes, the Bible per se points us to Christ, where we can take our grief. So our suffering can be taken. The Bible might not exhaustively tell us the problem of pain here, the solution, blah blah blah, but it tells us where to take our pain. So that's our hope, yani that Jesus also suffered and he empathizes with us, and it shall pass. Pain is not an end. There'll be a time when pain will be actually untrue, as C.S. Lewis puts it in another book, where some things will be actually untrue. So let's put our weight, our grief, our crying on God, because he's the one who truly cares and who truly has an answer and who truly can be with us through the fire. Thank you, and God bless.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Wandalo to close with a prayer. I know we have been bombarding you. We like your participation here. So I'll ask you to pray a short prayer of around 2 minutes, and we wrap this up. Thank you.
Okay, let us pray. Father, we thank you, Lord, that we know, Lord, that you began with creation, and there was the fall, and there's redemption, Lord, that awaits, that began with Christ to come into fruition, Lord, with Judgment Day and Jesus' rule. And we ask you to forgive us, Lord, for the times, Lord, that we've forgotten the big picture and we've become overwhelmed and have lost trust in you and have been unable to love our neighbors properly. And I pray, Lord, that you'll just minister to all who are currently struggling with suffering that we might not even be able to imagine. I really pray that you'll move mightily in their lives. And especially with the COVID situation, and we have the floods and the locusts, and our Western friends are just seeing people dying all over the place, and there's this racism that seems to be going on amongst the Chinese, amongst Africans, being seen as this and that, and even in the country, inequalities, and sometimes it's overwhelming, Lord. And sometimes even the more you study, the more things become more complicated. But I pray, Lord, that you'll be with us and help us to love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength during this time, and to love our neighbors ourselves, and show us how to do that, especially during this complicated time. But it is not our will, Father, but only yours be done in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for your time. I'll be sending my number for anyone who wants to join the group. And I must point out that it is not for the faint-hearted. Have a thick skin to participate in the group, and Christ be crucified. Amen.
Amen.
People can their own volition. So thank you very much.